You also see here article calls for opposition's merger to dislodge APC, warns against slide to one-party dictatorship. OIC selects Nigeria as special delegates to halt Gaza conflict. Francis, congratulations to you and your country. Alert 109 billion naira fraud. Court revokes ex-AGP Idris co-defendant's bail. Page 29 is where you have details of that. Killer of Lagos Loma sweepers is a mechanic. Police investigation. We inherited serious liabilities and assets. Tinubu says negotiates multi-billion infrastructure funding with Islamic Bank. That's all we have on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
That takes us to a very last paper this morning. That will be the front page of the Punch newspaper. And of course, we have the kicker there. Ajaro's alleged assault. FG knocks Labour strike records partial compliance. The story is on page 2, and the kicker there says, the writer there says, Tinubu not behind attack on Ajaro, escalating strike nationwide unreasonable AGF office. Lagos, Rivers, Kwara, Bauchi workers shun Labour. Kano, Edo, Delta, Kwabam, others comply. So we have just 4 states moving out while the rest of the states comply. The story is on page 2. 35 million naira needed to return body of Nigerian student. That's according to the ministry. Is on page 7. Sacked agency members sue at delegate, demand 2 billion naira. Page 29 has the story. Of course, election over, reform economy now. NPAN tells Tinubu, still on page 7. CBN extends all Naira notes deadline indefinitely. Page 11 has a story. Atiku advises Major to urge APC, still on page 7. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Punch newspaper. And of course, that takes us to the end of Adela's Spotlight and the conversations. We'll take a short time out here, and when we do return, we'll be holding a conversation with our guest. Of course, the focus is education. Stay with us.
Rise and shine. Rise and shine. Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
For brilliant broadcasts and entertainment, sports on the go, and news around the world, watch Spectrum TV on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and free-to-air frequency 12733. Visit our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Rise and shine. Rise and shine.
Welcome back. If you're still there, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, at this point, we've had so many conversations looking into strong issues happening in the country. We've also looked at the front pages of our national dailies, catch up on all that by following us across all our social media platforms, subscribe to our YouTube channel, get to our website at SpectrumTv Live. At this point, we're going to be getting into our focus conversation, and we're being joined by Marvelous Sen, who is an HR consult and organizational development expert. Of course, when you talk of someone who has expertise in how organizations should evolve and develop, the federal government is asking to move a certain motion to get universities and colleges of education to remit 40% of their internally generated revenue. And we have seen ASU, I beg your pardon, kick. We have seen Kohesu kick. And vice chancellors of universities are saying that this is not the wisest move by the federal government. Now, the internally generated revenue of universities, how much does it even accumulate to at the end of the day? Number two, these lecturers and universities have said they use these monies to try to mitigate the several infrastructural issues and even educational resource materials that they need within their schools. Why is the federal government attempting to look into the financial generation of schools? First of all, the education sector, the university, is not a revenue generating enterprise of the federal government. This is a really troubling narrative. Where are we headed with this kind of move right now from the federal government? That's what Marvelous is going to be unraveling and talking to us about this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Oya.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi, good to see you.
Great, right? Thank you for always coming by with the situation of things on our road.
Yeah.
So the federal government's IGR 40% from universities. What's your general thought about this whole idea? Is it actually a bad move by the federal government?
The challenge we face with this present federal government is that of communication. Sometimes they come up with issues like this and they are not very clear about their intention and what they really want to achieve. In understanding this, we need to understand how the education sector is run and how the education sector is funded. Basically, the funding of tertiary education in Nigeria is already in crisis. We take that from the several ASU strikes that has been coming up. And even if the federal government were to be very, very clear to talk about what their intentions are, it will still be very difficult for people to understand at this time. Therefore, the first issue we are having here is a question of timing. How do you come up at a time like this to, so to say in quotes, increase tax on the education sector? That is apparently how it appears. Now, the funding of education in Nigeria is such that about 80% is funded by the proprietor, that is the federal government. The other 20% comes from the internally generated revenue, which universities, tertiary institutions with their College of Education, they are encouraged to generate revenues in their institutions. But what we are discussing here would be, how are these institutions positioned to generate this revenue? Oh yeah, let me discuss it this way with you. You know, the understanding these institutions may be having, or rightfully having, is that the revenue, the internally generated revenue federal government should be referring to is that which comes from the profit ventures of these institutions. Yes, institutions, universities are supposed to have profit ventures in the campuses. They are supposed to have that. But that is different from payment for ID cards by the student, payment for clinic services. In fact, let me just summarize it to say service charges within the university. A student comes to school and has to pay for his accommodation. Since these federal schools are tuition free, they still pay for accommodation. If a student comes to school and has to pay for his accommodation, and you intend to classify that as internally generated revenue and want to tax or ask them, yes, tax, ask them to pay back 40% to the government, it virtually means that the school will add 40% to whatever amount these students would have been paying. So if a student was paying 600 naira before for ID card, it will mean that this student would now be paying 1,000 naira. There's going to be an automatic increase. And this will be passed onto the parents, onto the sponsors, onto the guardian of these students who are already battling with inflation, with economic challenges, economic crisis in Nigeria as we speak, as we are. Presently, we are in a kind of economic crisis in Nigeria because the inflation rate is almost hitting on 30%. Last week also, understanding the average inflation rate stood at about 27%. So when you look at this, is this the time that federal government should think of increasing school fees, in quotes? Because if you have these people in tertiary institutions and you're having them to begin to pay an extra 40% on their service charge, it automatically means that you have increased school fees. Then back to these profit-making ventures. A lot of people will see, for example, University of Uyo, they have a water company in University of Uyo. In University of Lagos, they have a water company. In fact, the mechanical engineering department, they can fix people's cars and repair. The computer department can repair computer for outsiders from the school and generate revenue. By that, you go, they will invoice you, they do certain things for you. In fact, companies can even go to universities and ask them to come and implement certain projects, even a research plan for their companies. But is that happening in Nigeria? No. It is not happening. Why is it not happening? It is because the universities themselves, they are not positioned, they are not well funded. So you have technical engineers go into universities as electrical engineer, as mechanical engineer, without exposure to the practical aspects of their education. So it is, if the federal government were funding this, was to fund these universities, these tertiary institutions, whether a college for education or universities or polytechnics, very, very well, or tertiary vocational studies center or technical centers, very, very well, that they would have said, oh, we have given you enough funding, we have established this workshop for you, we have established this, we have given funds for you to build this and that. Please be paying back 40% of whatever you are generating in this aspect. If that has not been done, how do you expect the university to be able, or the tertiary institutions in this regard, to be able to pay for cutting of grass, that is things that are presently outsourcing? How do you expect them to pay for their security guard in the university, which you are not paying? And how are you expecting them to maintain the facilities in the campuses when you are taking whatever they generate as internally generated revenue, which ordinarily would have been meant for maintaining these things and paying for these bills that they have within the university campuses? Now, when you look at this, you would conclude in your mind that it would be very, very unfair for the federal government to tax the universities or to ask them to pay back 40% of internally generated revenue without defining. That's where I'm talking about the communication issue. Without defining from where are they supposed to, what is the internally generated revenue you are referring to? In their understanding, they said, yes, there was an agreement that you can do this from profit ventures in the university. And that is the profit ventures I've described, like the water company, like the technical workshops and so on that are supposed to be offering. But these things are not even so functional. Even these water companies that they are operating, what is the cost that they are putting in to maintain these things? What is the percentage of profit they are even making? Are they even making profit from these ventures? Given the economic situation, given the fact that you have removed fuel subsidy, you have removed, I'm talking about timing now, you have removed fuel subsidy, you have floated the naira, Naira is struggling in the market. So many economic issues are arising. And you are asking the universities to pay you from the internally generated revenue in the deplorable states of these universities.
I think another question is, everyone that earns a living from the federal government, even in the private sector, everyone pays a tax to the federal government. When you take off all the taxes, that you take off salaries paid to staff members under your retinue, what do you do with the tax? That is a part of funds generated from university systems. When you leave all that tax and also want to go to getting, because like you said, this is some form of taxation on the university system. It was a few weeks ago that we saw the conversation that the federal government is trying to streamline all of the taxes that we have in Nigeria into 10, just to streamline it and cut it down. But this also looks like some form of extension on taxation in the education sector. So I'm asking, there is already taxation available on salaries of university staff members. Is that not enough for the federal government to do whatever they want to do? Why are they encroaching? Where's the? I think my question is, where is the rationale behind the federal government asking that universities should remit 40% of their internally generated revenue?
Oh yeah, you are describing the situation of multiple taxation that we are faced with in Nigeria generally, which the federal government should address effectively, but they are yet to do so. Just last week, I heard some people getting excited about property tax in Abuja, as Wike came up with property tax in Abuja. You see this as a revenue coming in, but you are not seeing the backside, the negative side of it, that it is affecting the economy of the country so badly. You could also look at it this way. There is state fund for the funding of these tertiary universities. Whether it is 2.5% or 3% now, I'm not too sure. But you are deriving taxes from all the companies that are supposed to. I'm not even going to talk about the payee, that is the salary tax from the salaries of staff. I'm not going to dwell on that because of the critical issues surrounding those other forms of tax. Now, if you look at it very, very well, we should even be asking, when we are developing budgets, the national budget for the country, what is the position of education? How much is allocated to education from the budget if government knows that the future of Nigeria depends on education? Now, we are having, part of the crisis we are even having in education includes the fact that we are not even running the kind of curriculum, or is it even right to even say we're not running the kind of curriculum? Yes, we are not running the kind of curriculum that we should be running in the country that should generate employment. That students should just go to school and come out.
And be employable.
And be employable. So how are we synchronizing the needs of employers and the students? Those are things that we should be focused upon, not going to take money from the university system that you are not even funding appropriately. We hear ASU come up every time to talk about these funding issues. Universities used to afford to have their lecturers go on sabbatical leave. They go on sabbatical leave, come back refreshed. But can we afford that at this time? No, we cannot. Because do they even have enough lecturers in the school system? Do they even have enough lecturers in the school system? This Japa syndrome,
Japa syndrome.
It's so high these days that you have our professionals going out of the country, seeking employment outside the country, seeking residency outside the country, and it's at its height now. Now, there are so many other issues that are affecting the education system. It is not the right time for you to now say, even if you want to say this, show us how you are going to implement it. I heard some of the teacher institutions are even asking, where is the 40% going to come from? It means we are going to increase these other fees, that is, these service charges in the universities. So on the one hand, you cannot say that tuition is free in the university and the children of the poor cannot attend this university if you increase. If you want to have a picture, like I said some time ago, about the students' loan scheme that they are marketing to us, if you are giving out students loan. For what purpose are you giving it? Who are going to take the loan? How are you going to manage it? How are you going to implement it? You have not been very, very clear to us on how you are going to implement this student loan scheme, and you are allocating money to students loan. Recently, we've heard about the yacht of 5 billion, and the House of Reps saying, "Oh, put it back to education,
students loan,
students loan scheme." And the other people say, no, maintain it. It's already been done or something. They are arguing over that. Now, some time ago, ASU were asking, I think about 40 billion for the universities in Nigeria. And Nigeria did not have 40 billion to put in education. But if you pick all these 2 billion for vehicles for the office of the First Lady, which is not even constitutional, you want to renovate Aso Villa. You want to renovate Aso Villa with about 4 point something or so billion in billions. Now, Aso Rock alone is consuming about 6 billion. In other areas, the legislature, they are consuming so much. And yet the future of Nigeria is ignored. The education, which is the future of Nigeria, is not given sufficient funding. I'm happy the House of Reps said, oh, come, please increase the budget by 15% for education, in this other aspect increased by this. Whatever will come out from that, we do not yet know. Whether they are sincere about it or not is yet to be seen. But I wish the federal government were to sit back and review these things and know that they should pay attention to education and pay the kind of attention to education that will impact on our economy as a nation. If you don't pay attention to education, it would keep affecting all aspects of our lives, including our electoral system. Look at what happened. If you study what happened in the situation room, where they call maybe collation center, in the just concluded off-cycle elections, you would be amazed at what issues were raised. And those issues were raised and debated upon mainly because people don't seem to have any confidence on your procedural systems, or people just don't know or have confidence, or are just simply ignorant on how administration should be run. And all these things are coming from the kind of education system we are having that is putting people in the labor market. So you cannot just blame people like INEC staff on corruption alone. There may be ignorance involved in these things on how it is done.
A lack of quality education.
We are not having the kind of quality education that will put forth people in the labor market that will be able to function well in the labor market as they should function.
We see the fact that there was a joint NEC meeting by the Executive Council of university workers now, of course, and then they signed a statement by Emmanuel Osodike, of course, the president of the union. They're saying that this move by the federal government is poised at impoverishing the university system, and also, he pointed out the fact that universities are not revenue-generating organizations. So how well is this going to, stand for them? COHESO also, which is the union that is that embodies all of the what do we call them now, colleges of education in Nigeria. They're also saying that this is not good enough. Now, one of the questions that this births is, when the federal government takes 40% from the internally generated funds of the universities, where do they hope to invest these monies? Are they investing it back to the education sector, or they are taking the already low-funded, money from the already low-funded institution and putting it elsewhere, which necessarily will not be in another sector that will move the country forward?
Oh yeah, if they are going to put it back in the education system, why don't they just leave it for the universities to manage their funds the way they should manage it? No matter how you look at it, from my perspective, from my opinion, it doesn't make sense. If you are not funding an institution appropriately, these people are looking for funding, and you are not putting the right funding into these places, why are you taking from them? Why do you even go to take the little that they are using to maintain the institutions from them? Are you paying for their grass cutting? Are you paying their security people? Are you paying for their hostel maintenance? How much are you putting in? I understand the federal government from their proprietary funding puts in about 8 million monthly to the education system, that is to each of the universities. And the universities are still complaining that this 8 million naira is not even coming as at when due. So you can imagine how they are struggling to maintain themselves or to maintain funding in the within the education system. So if these people, if the unions, the lecturers, the universities, the vice chancellors are coming out to say, to scream, they have all rights to scream. I know ASU, they have been making themselves, shouting their voice hoarse, but people may not really understand that we should all support ASU to make sure that they get it right. If we all know that we should support ASU, each time ASU goes on strike, NLC, TUC, all of them should join the strike for ASU, because ASU is the bedrock, is the foundation of the economy of this country. When we think of the future of this country, if you're not having the right education system, if you want to kill a nation, kill its education system. Look at what I was telling someone in some forum, that if you look at it very, very well, the problem in this electoral with Nigeria is that of poverty and illiteracy that has affected our voting pattern in Nigeria. Look at Hope Uzodinma has won election in Imo State. How did he win that election?
Flawlessly so. 27 local governments.
How did he win that election? It's a function of poverty. It's a function of illiteracy that has made him win that election. I make bold to say that most of the election that we are turning out in Nigeria today is not as a result of the choice of the people of Nigeria, but because people motivate people through buying of votes, and complete ignorance that people don't even know. I mean, poverty has made people not to be able to analyze candidates. Nobody looks at manifestos in Nigeria before voting for any candidate. Nobody listens to manifesto. No party can come up with an ideology to say, this is my ideology, I stand by this. So you see people cross-carpeting because they know that they are just seeking for power. Recently, Atiku has said, oh, come, coalition of parties to take power. All what they want is to take power. What are you going to do with the power? When you take the power, what are you going to do with the power? Now, these are things that is affecting the country so much. And if we want to change this, if we want to transform the nation, then you have to transform our education system. Yeah. Let the government think of how to bring the employers together. And let employers and the educators, the education system, work together, see how they can be together in a manner that they can think of how to transform this education system in a manner that you would have employable youths when they go to school, when they complete school, you have employable youths. You have a kind of system in schools that would allow a lot of citizens of Nigeria to go to school so that our illiterate population will reduce. When you reduce this illiterate population, the nation, no government in power would be able to bamboozle us or to tell us
to make choices that are not good for
that are not right for our country.
It's a strong conversation that we are having this morning, and I like the angle that you carried us through to look into this move by the federal government. But in its entirety, it's time for us to go. So I would just ask like a yes and no question. Would you say that this move is good? Because of the angle you came from, is it an entirely wrong move by the federal government, or would there be some gains in it if it were effected? If it's just like a yes or no, it works or it doesn't work.
It's difficult to say yes or no.
It's difficult to say yes or no.
Predominantly, I would say it is not a right move at all.
Okay.
Even though in some systems you should have the education system can generate from, like the example I made from the profit
you've
ventures.
Given those explanations.
From the profit ventures, you can pay back.
All right.
But not from service charge.
Strong conversation we've been having with Marvin Lysian this morning. He himself is a HR consult and organizational development expert. He has told us how best the federal government would have gone about this. But from the look of things, asking universities to return 40% of their internally generated fund is a bad move by the federal government. Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. We absolutely appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah.
But that's the much we can take on Wednesday's episode of Rise and Shine. Until we return to your screens again tomorrow, my name remains Uyai, and you can enjoy the rest of your day.